Wow, that's a pretty big conference. I'm quite impressed, and really compliments to Fabian where he developed this from last year. So it seems that AI is really on a rise, as the name of the conference says, and will affect us in all our lives. But I mean, with all respect to my fellow speakers and to the research, a lot of that is still very much in the future, and some of the stuff appears sometimes very boring. So therefore, it's good if you actually can touch with AI something that makes a lot of sense and that is really realistic. I mean, this is my idol from the 80s, right? K.I.T.T and the Knight Rider, having a car that actually turns into your body, into someone that supports you in every event. And oh, by the way, this is my idol, not this guy here. I know he's extremely popular still in Berlin. So any American guy here in the room, don't get confused. The Hoff is still a number here, but that's actually something that we are working at. That we try to build a system, or they're working on a system that actually turns a car into a companion. And since we have a lot of cars out there, we think, let's start with that. I don't know how familiar you are with automotive industries, but if you develop a system for a car, it barely will show up before 4 or 5 years from now on the road. While in Germany, we have 47 million cars. In the US, there are 220 million cars out on the road. And they are old. They're freaking old. Not every one of us is able to afford a Tesla or the latest 7 Series BMW, where you have a lot of technologies in. The average car in Germany is 10 years old. So we decided we go for something that fits in every car. And that is Chris. Our kit is named Chris, and Chris is a retrofit assistant that fits in every car, and you connect it with your phone and actually reads your email, and you can answer your text messages just with voice. It has a gesture sensor, so you can easily swipe through a list of contacts. You can listen to your music and elements like that. So that is something that we will bring to the market. And now the question that I would like to focus a little bit today on is what makes a co-driver a co-driver? What makes Chris different or other systems different in a car than just a home assistant? So I don't know if any of my previous speakers mentioned that, but there's a reason why we see at the moment this increase of voice interfaces all over the place. Of course, one of the reasons is that technologies sometimes are at the tipping point, right? We remember when the iPhone came in 2007, touchscreens were around for decades, and mobile internet was even not part of the first iPhone, etc. But it was at the tipping point, and then it exploded in what we know today from the smartphones. And we see this at the moment also with NLP and voice interfaces, definitely driven by platforms like Siri and Alexa and Cortana, etc. But also by a whole generation growing into that use. But there's also a technical reason. As so many things in AI, with the computing power that we have today, with cloud infrastructures, we are on a level that after 30, 40 years in voice recognition, we have a breakthrough on an almost human level. So before, voice interfaces were able to understand 50 to 60%. Which leads actually to the fact that those navigation systems in cars that you might gonna rent or own or whatever is a kind of a frustrating experience. A friend of mine driving a rather new German high-end car says he only uses the voice interface in his navigation system to entertain his kids on long-haul rides, because it's so funny that the voice doesn't understand it. So, and then if we look on that and say there's now 90% accuracy, the question is where we will see this breakthrough and where we will see people really to adopt those assistants. And most of people say at home, because this is where we see at the moment the strongest impact with all those connected speakers, with Alexa, with all of what we have here. But we believe strongly that the environment where the voice assistant and the co-driver, as we call it, will make most of impact and the fastest iteration and improvement will be the car. And the reason is very simple, because in the car I have to focus on the street, and still for a pretty long time. There are some people who want to make you believe that we all drive autonomous in 2019. I doubt about that, right? So for the next 10, 15 years, 15, 20 years, people will drive with 140 kilometers, 1.5 tons, and it's better if these people have their hands on the wheel and the eyes on the road and not write and reading text messages or watching videos. So that is also what we're working on. We're working on a conversational platform, as we call it, for automotive, right? And technically, a lot of what we're doing, you see also in assistants wherever they are. I mean, the home assistants I was talking about, but you also see industrial assistants. What is very special with us is that if we have a co-driver, the co-driver should work in each and every situation. And what makes a car very special compared to an office and a home in most of the countries is that the car is barely connected. I mean, if you're driving in the center of an urban environment, you might gonna have pretty good coverage. But it happened to me that around the corner here at Gendarmenmarkt, I couldn't open a car-sharing car from Drive Now because I'm in a 2.5G cell. And then there is no internet, and with no internet, I cannot open the car. Or if the car is in the parking or in a tunnel or in a rural area, and we all know those white spots, I mean, that is something I cannot recommend to go to Sicily with Google Maps. It might be a very stressful vacation because, I mean, in 75% of time you have no navigation because you're just offline. So that is something that we're focusing on, and we're focusing on this online and offline scenario in an automotive environment. So if we now looking to why would we need an assistant in a car? And that is the question, right? We sometimes have this feeling, why do we at all have this? And I mean, talking about cars and about mobility, there was this phenomenal success of navigation systems 10, 12 years ago, right? TomTom, Garmin, you know that. And that was a use case everyone got immediately, because having, instead of a paper map, you have a system that tells you how to get from A to B, and you arrive your destination, and then traffic information came on top. That was a no-brainer. But why you need an assistant in a car, right? Or why you need at all an assistant? And that is something when we look on the car, there is a very pressuring reason for now. Prospectively, there are a lot of reasons to have this assistant. But today, the ADAC, the German Automotive Club, 19 million members, they say there are more people dying in traffic by smartphones than by alcohol and drugs together. So this is a curve from the North American Highway Transportation Safety Administration, NHTSA, saying that in the first time in 10 years, in a decade, we have an increase of death casualties on US highways. And they call it the Snapchat effect. It's not my expression, right? So meaning that while we have all these old cars, or relatively old cars, and while we are all so addicted to ding, there's a new WhatsApp coming, there's a new Facebook thing, whatever, we have this high level of distraction, which, as said, at home is no problem, because you can handle 5, 6, 7 different tracks at the same time. But while you're driving with 140 kilometers per hour, there is an impact. And there's a massive impact which can lead to your own death or to the death of other people. Bless you. So now is the question, what makes an assistant, right? When we talk about digital assistant. And that is something that I would say 99% of people here in the room would say, yeah, it's that I can talk to it, her, whatever, right? That is something that we started to, as said, interact with those first voice systems in navigation systems, but many of you experienced this with Siri, for example. That was a lot of fun, and I could talk, it replied, it felt a little bit human, it felt a little bit AI. It's not very much AI, believe me. It's a lot of ML. But that is something what we see as one of the disciplines that we are all working at, natural language processing, which is something that is also a part of this breakthrough of the systems, that I don't have to learn anymore a special language. Oh, that's one of the reasons why people don't like to use the current voice systems, because I have to learn those commands. Navigation, start, city, country, now, and then you say the city name and it doesn't understand you because whatever, you have a beautiful accent or the system or there's noise around, or I don't know. So, and that's something that with those systems that you know from the modern voice interfaces turns into what we call the natural language processing. So you just talk to a system as you would talk to a person, which makes it feel very, very natural, right? And the most impressive presentation gave Google again 2 weeks ago, the Doblex, when a voice assistant actually called a restaurant to book a table. And I mean, I think for 48 hours I had no other postings in my Facebook and LinkedIn feed because people were just so wowed, right? It's a complete different discussion. Yesterday we had a very nice evening with the BCG Digital Ventures about AI and ethics, if this is something that we really want to have. But that's something that's elementary to have this interaction, this voice interaction within a system. But the real question in our case is, what makes a co-driver, right? Because understanding you, that is one part. Saying, Alexa, tell me a joke, or whatever, Cortana, switch off the lights, or Siri, I need new orange juice, or I don't know. That's one element to understand you, and having all this, what we call the dialogue management, the intent management. Out of the intent understanding, we do a decision. That's something what the chatbot intelligence that my fellow previous speaker was explaining about is doing. But with a co-driver, it's something different, right? Think about, you're driving a car and someone is sitting next to you, knowing you very well, right? Your wife, your husband, a good friend, someone who really knows you. And while you're driving, you might going to be stressed or whatsoever. So it needs a fundamental amount of information about yourself and right, your driving patterns, etc., to do the very right thing at the very right time. And why does it matter? Because while being mobile, we have two more dimensions. We have the location that counts. That doesn't count while I'm at home because it's just home. And we have speed, acceleration, right? So if you're approaching a highway exit, and there is one of these classic double exits, right? First exit, next exit, couple of 200 meters behind. It's fundamentally super important for you to listen to the navigation command in the right moment. And that means that in this very right moment, your co-driver should not start to read an email for you, which actually happens with common systems because there is no prioritization. So, or thinking about that, that is the A100 here in Berlin. It's a picture from 8:30, 7:30 in the morning. The very same picture at 11, no cars. And you all know these situations in your environments in the cities. The 101, San Francisco, down to the valley, all over the world, right? So we have contextual influence that a co-driver actually needs to know, which at home, again, is not too important. Or weather conditions, historical conditions, that you know, okay, this is a dangerous curve that I only know because I drove it before. And it's something where I can warn you proactively, like this rally driver that we saw before. Or that's something, behavior, right? As I said, at the moment, you're approaching a highway exit and you're focusing on what is the right thing to do now. Do I have to take the turn or the next turn? Something like that. If you're talking in a situation like that to an assistant that would actually work or react like a general assistant at home, while you would stop talking, the assistant would decide, okay, dialogue over, I switch off this activity now. While in a car, because it's something where you cannot just say, okay, I finish one activity and then I start the other, just by the fact how I just described it. If you just turn around and looking, you will not talk in this situation. People will not do that, right? Women maybe, men definitely not. I mean, they turn off the radio to ask for the destination. I mean, that's something what natural human beings do, right? It's a cognitive load. And that is something that someone who knows you and who learned about you definitely would have to consider in the process of decision making. So, as said, we said a co-driver, a system that is a co-driver needs to know about the context it is in and the situation it's in, and about your behavior. And the behavior is not it's not a single situation, it's something that you have to learn. So you have to spend time with the person to learn out of that. And in our case, you also have to adopt this behavior to other people, right? All like that. We're working here on a project with the German Ministry of Transport. We got this M Fund awarded. It's a subsidiary that subsidies that actually help you to develop certain R&D projects. That's the question: in which situation a driver has the perfect cognitive load. So what does that mean? So this Wolfgang Fastenmeier is working on this for 30 years. It's a professor for traffic psychology from Munich. So we all can imagine this situation that I had before on the A100, that it's a stressful thing. You have 4 lanes, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you have 40 emails in the inbox, the first meeting is at 8, you're late already, you have to take the lane, whatever, right? Something like that, completely stressful. In a situation like that, you definitely don't want to listen to an email that an assistant actually could read to you. No? That would be the overload. But in the same way, there is an underload. If you're driving 3 hours on a long haul trip and nothing is happening, and you're just driving, you underloaded cognitively, right? Something where in a real life, someone will start to play a game with you or telling you a story because you're about to fall asleep. Or actually, someone would say, hey, come on, we have 2 more hours, it's midnight, why don't we just do a stop, and there's a hotel around the corner, and we continue the ride at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's something that also a co-driver should know. So, and that is what we are working at in addition to this just technical capabilities to train an assistant to speak. That's something how you train a kid, like a baby. Every baby is coming with the capability to talk, but it takes quite a while before it makes sense what it says. And then it takes even much more before you want to send it to school, etc. That's something that we do. And the other element is that what I just described is this cognitive understanding, the cognitive prioritization of a co-driver. So, in a nutshell, what we're doing is building this infrastructure, this platform that initially will now bring as a consumer product. You can buy it already, and which fits in every car. Prospectively, it's about exactly this intelligence. I always say we built the soul and the brain of Chris, the soul and the brain of a co-driver. And that's it. Thank you very much. And I have 2.5 more minutes for questions. No questions? The consumer product, 299 euros or US dollars. At the moment, you can order it for 199 at our website because we have a pre-sale campaign, hellochris.ai. But it will be 299. Yeah. And would come in German and English, and that's the point. I mean, you have to teach a kid to speak, and at the moment we teach it in German and English, but it will also speak French and Spanish and all these fancy great languages. Good, no more questions? Then, thank you very much. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.